Welcome back to Who Doesn't Have a Podcast. You're joining us on quite a momentous day because it's finally been officially confirmed that Doctor Who Series 2 is returning, and it's returning April 12th. So the journey to this announcement has been quite interesting, Dan. And to get there, we're going to play one of those word association games. So I'm going to say a word, and then you're going to tell me the first word that comes to your head when you hear the word I'm going to say. Make sense?
Okay. Yes.
So you're not allowed to pause. You just have to think. You just have to go, okay, I've received that information, and now I'm going to say the first thing that comes to my head. Okay?
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
ready? 3, 2, 1. Rugby.
Doctor Who.
And I think that's what they were going for, right?
Yeah.
That's the geniuses, the marketing geniuses at the BBC decided that they were going to announce that Doctor Who was returning on the 12th of April during a interlude in one of the Six Nation rugby matches, but crucially, Dan, not on terrestrial TV, only on the iPlayer.
What the hell were they thinking?
That has to be a fuck up, right? It has to be a fuck up.
It has to be.
And now, a few days later,
yeah.
Go on.
No, sorry, I was just going to say it's because I know the BBC got a bit of a knack for this because we mentioned earlier on that like Gavin and Stacey have teased the last two big specials with adding little bits on an iPlayer without telling anybody. But to kind of relaunch Series 2 of your now only big show globally through iPlayer in the middle of a rugby game makes absolutely no sense to anyone.
So you think that it was purposeful? Is that right?
I think they were trying to broaden the horizons, and they thought, who are we missing in our demographic? Rugby fans.
We were saying before on the chat that it's the Venn diagram, isn't it? It's the Venn diagram. You draw. I'll do a little. I'll put it into the podcast. I'll draw a little Venn diagram because there's such a big overlap between those two. Those two groups of people, aren't they? All the rugby fans that were watching. I can't remember. I haven't been able to find what game it was that was actually playing, but I'm sure as soon as they saw that announcement. But remember, only the people that were watching on iPlayer, they all stood up at once and went, "Yes, Doctor Who returns on April 12th." I think it was probably a fuck up. I think it screams of one of those things where they were probably going to do a teaser and then they accidentally, because they probably got multiple marketing materials going around at once, so they probably accidentally loaded up the wrong one, which had the release date on it. Because then a few days later, they have officially announced it, and there's a statement that's been put out today, which is good. Do you think it was done on purpose, maybe, to drum up a bit of, because there were articles that were written a couple of days ago saying they've announced a new series of Doctor Who in a weird way, so maybe that would drum up interest somehow. I'm not sure.
Wouldn't surprise me. Hey, do you know what? Any publicity is good publicity as far as the BBC is concerned. One example, as I said before, that they've used in the past is stuff like Top Gear. Their viewing figures spiked for that when they got these very controversial headlines in the newspapers to release a release date for Doctor Who in the most unexpected of places. I was saying to you before, it's up there with, and I might be getting this so wrong, but I'm fairly sure it was either tennis, football, or I'm convinced it was Formula One. If there was some Formula One coverage or something was on the BBC, it was a sports event, and and it was, I remember clear as day, it was Jake, what's his name?
Jake Humphries.
Jake Humphries, that's it. And he went, and before we get back to the action, we've got a little announcement. And then Jodie Whittaker's announced to go, yeah, Jodie Whittaker's Doctor Who. Fernando Alonso, and you like happening?
If they were going for the same thing, because I remember that announcement. That was I remember them doing that live, but that was on, if I remember right, that was done on BBC One terrestrial television as it went out live, right?
Yeah.
So that had a huge impact, especially because it was the first female Doctor. It was a big reveal. This one, if they were trying to go for the same thing, they fucked it. Because I can't imagine, the rugby is a popular event, but I can't imagine millions of people watching that broadcast. And then for it only to go out on the iPlayer as well, I think it's probably a fuck up. Quite funny. Anyway, the official announcement is a bit more interesting. So, one of the main bits of the announcement is that they've released a bit of new information regarding that cartoon character that we were talking about a couple of weeks back. The one that comes out of the screen.
Yeah.
So the first big news about it is that cartoon. So I'll read it out. So it's going to be played by Alan Cumming, huge actor. So that's a good get.
Okay.
And the character's name is, and this is great, Mr. Ringerding. And And the sort of tagline is a happy, funny sing along cartoon who lives in Sunnytown with his friend Sunshine Sally. However, in 1952, after years of repeats in cinemas across the land, Mr. Ringading suddenly looks beyond the screen and sees the real world outside, and the consequences are terrifying. Sounds good.
That sounds amazing.
And it sounds very much what you would have been able to gather by the short snippet of it that we saw in that trailer, because it is
Mm,
him coming out of that screen.
yeah. Do you not find it a
And it,
bit bizarre that they've never done anything like that before in Doctor Who?
I do, yeah, because I think we don't know yet because we haven't seen the episode. But considering that people went wild for that bit in the trailer, and considering that they're leading series two bundled in with this announcement, I think if it's as scary as it seems, and it does seem really scary, it might be another Weeping Angels esque
Mm,
masterstroke because it seems like a really simple idea that I've never seen done before. They've got a really good actor to play that character, Alan Cumming. Yeah, I'm really interested in that. I just hope that it's just not. I hope that it's just not one good idea that's like wrapped around an episode. That's like in an episode of
yeah.
poor execution. I hope
Yeah.
it. Obviously, what they're doing. You've spoken about this before. Is they're leaning into this fantasy element, and this is a really good way of like this is more fantasy than it is sci-fi. But if they get it right, and it's as scary as it sounds, because it does sound really scary. Mr. Ringading suddenly looks beyond the screen and sees the real world outside. Outside, that's absolutely terrifying. And then you see him coming out of the screen. Yeah,
I
I'm
think we're long
excited for that.
overdue. We are long overdue a scare on Doctor Who. And if it can provide that, I cannot wait.
Yeah, I'm really, really pumped for that. So yeah, so that's it hitting the screen on April 12th. I can't see anything in this article about can't see anything about the release schedule. So I don't know if you remember last year, they pioneered what turned out to be quite a controversial release schedule where and I can see why they did it. They wanted a worldwide release for each episode at the same time. But
Mm.
technically what that meant was that it was dropping in the US at a normal time in the evening. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head. But then if UK viewers wanted to see it at the same time, they were going to have to stay up till midnight to do so. Um, I haven't seen anything about a release schedule like that, but let me just have a quick look.
It would be nice for them to be spoiler free when it's released, because I think that's the biggest issue. I fell foul of that so many times. You'd wake up in the morning, you'd check X, and it would just be littered with screenshots, comments, references, and it ruined the moment, which I think
All
is
all
kids growing
saying,
up. Yeah,
all
also
saying, all saying, Dan, kill yourself. Dan, you're a horrible person. Dan,
and then I switched onto my
just
burner.
endless abuse.
Yeah, I switched onto my burner account, then I forgot to do that. And then I found that. But I think that's what Doctor Who needs. It needs to be that Saturday night you tune at 7 o'clock and you're all experiencing it together for the first time. And if that means you release it at a different. Because this is what I don't understand. If it needs to be a worldwide release, why don't they just release it at the same time it's then first broadcast on BBC One? No one's missing out. If anything,
Mhm.
it's, at least for America, you're getting it during the day, so it's there ready to go for your evening, and people aren't getting the spoilers, which are just synonymous with a midnight release. So
I
I think
guess
it's such a
it's
good idea to do that.
I guess it's the same as like most other streaming shows that I watch these days. I'll go to work and then I'll finish and then I'll log into whichever streaming app it is and it's already there. So all of these shows that don't come out with a specific time, do they just drop at midnight on the day, on the release day?
Usually, I mean, it depends because like you'll have somewhere because it's like album release parties and stuff like that. They'll make sure they drop it so like as many people are awake to experience it at the same time as possible. And it depends on the broadcaster because I know Amazon tend to keep it around midnight or 20 past 11, which is kind of their unique thing for like dropping stuff in the UK. Netflix, they tend to go in at midnight. There's some broadcasters that will sort of landlock it, so it'll release at midnight in each respective region. But then that causes the other problem then of spoilers coming from the other side of the world, and then you can't beat them to it because it's too late. You have to wait your turn. But I'd love it to return to a Saturday night. We all kind of get it together, because if the viewing figures are the big issue, and iPlay's maybe stolen a lot of those, that would resolve it fairly bloody quickly.
Last year, I didn't, because what they did last year was they released it synonymously on streaming services, and then it did play on BBC One at around 7 o'clock, if I remember right, or six.
Yeah, that's
Well,
right.
this another thing. It's a bit of a bugbear I've had about how they've released Doctor Who in recent years. Is it doesn't stay at a consistent time. Sometimes it
Yeah.
drops at like 5:30. Sometimes it's 6. Sometimes it's 7. But anyway, it did drop on BBC One in the evening, as it always did. But the viewing figures that it accumulated for each episode, I believe they were quite low. And that's because people always thought, well, most people are just watching on iPlayer. And I can testify to that. Like, I would finish work or have a break in the day, and I'd go, oh, I've got a new episode of Doctor Who to watch, and I'd just load it up on the iPad instead of ever watching it go out live, which is completely different. But then I don't know if you can ever get back that live TV experience for a drama where everybody is like tuning in to watch like that one drama the next episode. I can't remember the last drama that I got. Sometimes it happens with reality TV, like The Traitors. I don't know if you watched The Traitors this year, but like loads of people tune in. Yeah, loads of people tune in. But that is obviously a completely different prospect to something like a drama or a sci-fi. Maybe Broadchurch. Do you remember when Broadchurch came out? I don't know if you were watching
Broadchurch's a
that.
really good example. Yeah. I'm
Because
trying to
then
think,
again, when did Broadchurch come out? Like years ago. So
that was
everything shifted.
Yeah, big time. I think there's pros and cons whichever way you look at it, but I think if you're trying to sort of salvage, if what we've heard is true, and I know we've already spoken in great detail about how much nonsense might have been spread off the back of this, but if you want to save the program, throw it back to that original release date. They tried something new. Maybe it didn't work in the way they wanted it to. And let's face it, unless you are savvy enough with the VPN, you're kind of landlocked from watching it beyond the BBC and iPlayer here in the UK anyway. So it doesn't matter when the rest of the world gets it if you're not going to be able to see it firsthand. Maybe that's the way around it. Disney will launch it in the way they do. We get it on TV like we used to when we were kids growing up. I know like the way of the world is so different now, and people like consume media in different ways, but I feel like there needs to be that community thing again. And I think that's why these viewing figures have been so poor, is because there's a whole generation shift where, like you said, you can finish work, you can wake up in the morning, that's the first thing you put on. So you're not, of course, you're not going to wait until like tea time on that evening to watch. Why would you? It's already there. So I don't know. I would love to kind of be able to experience it as a community, because I think that's what made Doctor Who great. I mean, like look at like the regenerations in the past. Like you had to be there to experience it. But again, it's you're at the mercy of Disney and the BBC and whatever they agree on. And if they've not said anything yet, it might already just be carrying on as they did in the past.
I love the word landlocked, by the way.
Thank you.
Where have you pulled that from?
I've just pulled that. That's like a streaming thing as well. Because yeah, no, that's there in streaming circles, I think. Because
it sounds like it could be. It sounds like it could be the name of a Doctor Who short story, like Doctor Who landlocked. Like the Doctor is stranded on Earth without his TARDIS. He's landlocked.
Let me put it to this way, Mike. The war between the land and the sea, landlocked. Which one sounds amazing? Come on.
Doctor Who landlocked. I have always thought this about the war between the land and the sea. I think it's a bold title. It's long. Like it is long. That's a long title for a TV show.
I'm gonna say it. I think it's a bit of a boring title. I feel like they could have, because because you have Jane Adventures. I'm joking about that, but the war between the land and the sea, it's such a long name, and like landlocked, or I don't know, fisticuffs or something like, I don't know, something like it could have just been like I don't know. Look, it's just a title. I mean, to quote Alan Partridge, it's just a title, but I don't know. I feel like it was a missed opportunity.
I saw that Twitter account, that accidental partridge or whatever it is, or whatnot. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It was talking about it's that classic clip of Alan lying back on his bed with his tape recorder, like shooting the breeze, like shooting ideas. And it was when ITV had announced that they'd commissioned that special where Philip Schofield was going to be on that island days after that scandal, and it's just Alan being like Philip Schofield on an island. Bet, hear me out. He's going to tell his side of the story. Anyway, I agree with you. That was a tangent. I agree with you. Landlocked. I don't know. Yeah, I like that as a word. I like that as a word. And the war between the land and the sea. I think that title would have to be justified by an amazing story. So we'll see. We'll see if we get to the end of that series and we're like, now that title, like that's great. That's a great title, as opposed to, you know.
I mean, I know we've got the release date now. Have we got any more news about the show? Have we got any more like leaks or teasers or anything else? Because I think the only other thing we haven't mentioned is the now hilarious news that David Tennant has now suddenly become the front runner to replace Ncuti Gatwa. And I know we've been saying it for months. In case of emergency, break glass for Tennant. They kept him alive and then dragging him through the void away from Donna again. What a
is it the bookies that have just done that by themselves? Have they just been like, oh, we're just going to increase the odds on David Tennant?
They've just thought the same mantra as they have, and they've gone, what's happened in the last 12 months? Okay, well, there's now 2 doctors, and that one sat on the side drinking iced tea, having a whale of a time with Donna. Bring him back.
You keep saying this in a jokey way, but maybe there's a sinister undercurrent where you're like, I need this to happen. I'll put all of my money on it. have you seen that the bookies have increased his odds, and you've been like, I'm just going to put my whole salary on it?
I'm
due to lose a lot of money if David Tennant doesn't come back to Doctor.
It's just it's like I'm going to quote Partridge again, but it's like that bit where he's having the meet at the Beeb, and he's just like, Tony, I've just bought a house.
We've got to cover that deal on the Partridge special coming out. There's actually,
Mike, keep this in. If anyone is interested in a Partridge podcast, please let us know in the comments, because this is something we can totally do.
I'm more excited for that than I am about any Doctor Who coming up this year. It's like, good news, we've got a release date. Some of the images, the promotional images that they've released for the series are really good as well. I'll put them up in the podcast.
Yeah, please do.
There's a really, really good one of Ncuti Gatwa with like a background of the universe, like stars, sort of turning towards the camera, which looks really cool, really slick. And there's one of Murada Sefu as well as the new companion, looking really good. So yeah, I'm really hopeful for the series. I think Alan Cumming is such a good actor to cast. Hopefully that's a really iconic villain. Finally, we will find out about Mrs. Flood as well. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Breaking news. We've got some breaking news. This was about half an hour ago. This just dropped on the Radio Times. I don't know if you've just seen this, Mike. Doctor Who, again, is returning on the 12th of April. But in the more minor details of the news is something that's actually quite a positive move for UK fans, less so for those across the pond. The new episodes are going to drop at 8 a.m. on iPlayer before airing on BBC One later the same day. It marks a small but notable shift from the previous season's model of episodes dropping at midnight, 19 hours before broadcast on linear TV. Thoughts?
Very good. Yeah, so we were literally just discussing that.
So, while episodes would air between the very sociable hours of 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. on Fridays in the US on Disney Plus, depending on your time zone, if UK viewers wanted to watch the episode immediately via a VPN, or on iPlayer, they would need to stay up until about 1 a.m., which is of course fine for the teenage and early 20s demographic, but less fine for those of us past the age of 25 who need our beauty sleep. So Doctor Who's going to become a breakfast release on Saturdays.
I'm just going to read that again. I've just pulled up the. Oh, so it really. Okay, yeah, okay. Hold on, I'm confused. So it's releasing at 8 a.m. on the iPlayer.
On iPlayer.
Wasn't that what they did last year?
No, it dropped at midnight on iPlayer because then that lined up with the 7 p.m. broadcast on Disney Plus for the US. So what's happening now is rather than a 19-hour gap, it's now going to be 12. So I think the idea is because people we are prophesizing so hard. I think people were getting annoyed with waking up and it already being leaked on social media. So at 8 o'clock, it's a good enough time to wake up, be able to see it before it's spread and gone viral.
So when did the US get it now? So Episodes set to air in the US on Saturday mornings from 12 a.m. to 3 a.m.
So I think what they're going to do is they're going to delay the release time across the world to tie in with the fact that it's going to be released or drop at 8 a.m. on Saturday mornings on iPlayer in the
Okay.
UK.
This is interesting. Listen to this bit of the article.
Okay.
It was previously speculated that the midnight release in the UK was largely Disney's decision. At that stage, Disney Plus was all about its Friday releases, and some fans wondered if the Saturday midnight release time in the UK was a side effect of the streamer wanting to release in the US on Fridays. Now that's completely changed, with episodes set to air in the US on Saturday mornings from 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. Whether or not this is an example of the BBC standing its ground, it's impossible to say. But things are certainly looking better for UK viewers.
I'm going to do this very briefly. I think it was long overdue the BBC grew some balls about this. I mean, if you're going to take back, I mean, I'm going to sound like Brexit here, but if you want to take back control, you pull it away from the foreigners.
Take back control of our Doctor Who.
Yeah, take back
from the House of Mouse.
Give our doctors back. I'm bouncing back. Another partridge. No, this is fantastic. I think this might actually. I don't think it's going to solve the problem. I think people are still going to watch it before, etc. But I think it's now you've read that actually makes a ton of sense, because you think of every single streamer, they all drop episodes on Fridays, all of them. Around that kind of evening slot where people have just finished work, they're chilling out for the weekend, it's there ready to go. So the fact that Disney have kind of pulled one back, if that is a legitimate reason, then absolutely, I'd take my hat off to the Beeb. That is fantastic.
I wonder, pure speculation, but is this the start of the BBC Disney uncoupling? You know, are we going to get an announcement in a couple of days' time that Disney have decided that they're not going to be going forward with Doctor Who? Because if Disney Plus basically get their way with everything else that lands on their platform, but the BBC have stood their ground and said, well, traditionally we want the UK viewers to get this first, if not at the exact same time as everybody. I know that was technically what was happening, but like this article said, and like you said, who's staying up until midnight, 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, a handful of people. So if that's the BBC saying this is the way we've always done it, we always wanted Doctor Who on a Saturday, I wonder if that's an early sign of who knows? Who knows? Maybe who knows? Like they've said, they're going to wait till the end of series 2 to make a decision. But I wonder if this is a bit of, we know that Disney aren't going to renew the deal, so fuck them.
Yeah, I think it might be, and it would make a lot of sense now to kind of reestablish the show back to kind of its common ground and like back to its home back in the UK. Because I think the other thing is as well, Mike, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, because it has just almost been like a sudden announcement. There's been no build up like the previous season has been, and they were promoting their hell out of it. Do you reckon that might be Disney kind of getting their own back? So it's like, right, okay, you can have the 8 a.m. launch on iPlayer, we'll change your release day, but you can't promote it because we've paid for all of that. So if we're gonna if there's gonna be big announcements, trailers, stuff like that, that's gonna be from our side. We'll decide that. You can have it at 8 a.m. UK, you can have that. But we're gonna decide as and when we promote it.
Now, interestingly, as well, and I'll put these up on the screen for any viewers, I'll edit it into the podcast, is what I mean, is these promotional images that I'm looking at here, the ones that I was describing of Shooty and Barada. I don't know if you want to pull them up, Dan.
Yeah, I'm saying
it's only got BBC branding on it. It says new series iPlayer, Doctor Who, BBC branding. I can't see anything about a Disney. I can't see any Disney images.
Right, and it's funny you mention that, because there has been, I just saw it briefly, there is an iPlayer, sorry, there is a Disney Plus version.
Okay.
I can't seem to find it the exact, oh, there you go, right, 3 hours.
I've got it. Yeah, I've got it. So that's obviously, yes, all right, so that's obviously what's going out worldwide for anyone that is watching Doctor Who internationally. But for us in the UK, we see the BBC-led version, which is good.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just trying to stir up some shit there. Who doesn't have a podcast breaking news exclusive? The promotional images for Doctor Who don't have Disney anywhere, but that's not actually true. I'm sorry. Nice. Okay. I mean,
There is one last thing, and again, I can just hear the snippy snip snip of my own voice on this podcast. But Michael, but again, there's been some interviews in the last couple of days with Jodie Whittaker regarding her time as the Doctor. Headlines being that she felt like boys wouldn't look up to a female Doctor Who like they have in previous Doctors. She didn't fit the mold of the show, and she was worried that she'd kind of fuck up basically Doctor Who for other actors. She'd ruin the legacy of the show, and apparently it put a pressure on her as an actor and as an individual that sent her into a bit of a downward spiral. I'll obviously just jump in a few of his extra bits of detail. If you haven't read them already, I highly recommend you go online to read up on this. Mike, what do you make of that?
yeah, I think that's interesting. You know, I've got a weird take on this. Is what's interesting is Jodie Whittaker is out there at the moment promoting a new Netflix drama that she's in called Toxic Town, and it's interesting that if you type in her name into Google, all that comes up is the stuff that she said about Doctor Who, which I think reflects quite positively on Doctor Who, because it almost says that Doctor Who still has a lot of cultural like capital, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
like it's like whenever anyone says anything about Doctor Who, we saw it a couple of weeks ago with the the news that it might be cancelled or whatnot. Like it does the rounds, which is I think that's good for the show. So that's one angle on it. The other one
Yeah.
is I'm not surprised that she felt a lot of pressure because it was trailblazing and they were breaking the mold by finally making the Doctor a woman. They've done it with other time people, time lords. The Master had become Missy, so Michelle Gomez was cast as technically the Master Missy, and also in Peter Capaldi's tenure, there was an episode where a Time Lord called the General was shot. So the General, Dan, you probably won't have seen this, but the General was in the 50th anniversary special. I can't remember the actor's name. See if I can find him. He's like a bald guy. I think he's the guy that says in the 50th anniversary special, "Oh God, all 12 of them,"
Yes.
and then he goes, "No," or "No, sir, all 13," or someone else says that to him. So
Doing the eyebrows.
you're doing the eyebrows. So in an episode of Peter Capaldi's Doctor Who, a live regeneration happens with the General, and then the General turns into a woman. So like on screen as it happens. So, but it was still a long time before Jodie Whittaker was cast in the main role. So yeah, I'm not surprised that she felt a lot of pressure. Here's what she said: "Everyone's Doctor until then was a white man. They're very different actors, but they all fit a specific mold, and I didn't." It's very true. And she says, if Peter Capaldi hadn't been good as the Doctor, it would only have reflected on him. Whereas I felt that if I wasn't very good at this, I've fucked it for other actors. And then she says, I think that's completely unacceptable. But if that was the case, no, oh, sorry, I think it would have been completely unacceptable if that was the case. But that's how I felt. Yeah. Yeah. There we go.
Okay.
She was actually a very good Doctor, I think, Jodie Whittaker.
I think, like you said in the
Some
past, I think she was a victim of poor writing, and they just didn't really know how to make the most of her. And I think when you've got a bit of a mix of a show that doesn't really know what it's supposed to be doing, and then a writer that doesn't really know what they're supposed to be writing, it's a bit of a recipe for disaster. And I think that's just
Jerome might have said that. I'm actually quite a big fan of Chris Chibnall's era of Doctor Who. I think that
Hey.
as other eras, it has its flaws because it's horribly hard creating a series of like television, I imagine, and making it like super consistent. But I was actually quite a big fan. I was quite a big fan of here, and I was quite a big fan of some of the arcs that they did. Jerome's not a fan.
Is that because they basically added a whole load of folklore to the show that never previously existed, and now it's like, what on earth is going on?
I think, and I don't want to take words out of his mouth, but I think it's because the Doctor wasn't a white man anymore.
That's just Jerome. We are painting him in such a bad light. Internet, he's a nice man.
Hey, if you're not here, you get burnt, you know?
Well, yeah, exactly. I'm going on a drive with my friends. Yeah, he's just crying in a car park. That's the truth.
Crying. Yeah, I'll never be Doctor Who now. I'll never be cast as the Doctor. It's all women these days. Oh, there we go. Okay. Anything to add?
I don't think so, but again, thank you for watching. If you want to interact and join the discussion, please feel free to in the comments section of TikTok and YouTube. That is at Who Doesn't Pod.
Stop giving me abuse on TikTok. There's
Yeah,
one guy on TikTok who keeps commenting. I need to turn the comments off, but
No, keep the comments on, Mike. I've got 3 words for you, and I hope to God you keep this in. You don't have to answer it. You can cut to black. Name and shame. It's an open forum.
Listen, I don't want to feed the trolls. Anyway, yeah, sorry, I interrupted you mid-flow.
No, I was going to say, if you do like what we've watched, please feel free to follow us on all the socials at Who Doesn't Pod. Like, comment, subscribe, retweet, you know the drill. The more you can promote us, the more we can make more of this podcast. And it would be nice to have at least 3 fans.